Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to do a rifle cartridge review on the 257 Weatherby. Stay tuned. Alright guys, so today we're going to talk about this speed demon of a cartridge. And this was one of 4 cartridges that Roy Weatherby initially developed in 1944 and released in 1945. The 257 Weatherby, 270 Weatherby, 7mm Weatherby, and then 300 Weatherby. Now these 4 cartridges were based on the 300 H&H, which came from the 375 H&H. Now all 4 of these cartridges, of course, have a double radius Venturi shoulder that he patented. And he developed them with a chamber with very tight tolerances on the sides. So very little free bore on the sides of the bullet. However, there's a very tall head height. In fact, you might not even be able to reach the lands with the bullet intentionally. And his motto was just to seat the bullet out to the length of the magazine, and you're still going to have a little bit of jump, but that means he could load factory ammo up really hot and it shouldn't get over pressure. So really tight tolerances on the free bore of the side of the bullet, but a long head height. And of course, just that big 300 H&H case, but the taper taken out and that shoulder change would give a lot of capacity for more powder. With the 300, of course, he left it at that full length Magnum length, and with the other 3, including the 257 Weatherby, he did shorten it a little bit to fit in the standard length action similar to a 30-06. Now, one main reason why he did shorten those other 3, the 257, the 7mm, and the 270, was probably due to available powder at the time. At the time, the slowest burning powder from DuPont was IMR 4350. And you just simply couldn't utilize a bigger case in those overbore cartridges. And so it really didn't make any sense to have them full length, Magnum length. And so he just simply put it in a standard action. He also originally twisted the 257 with a 1 in 12 twist. And really 100 grains was kind of the maximum that he planned on shooting it. Now later, of course, many slower burning powders came out, and that IMR 4350 really isn't even slow enough with a 26-inch barrel to get the real potential out of the cartridge. And also we've, of course, went up to a 1 in 10 twist, being able to stabilize up to like a 120 grain bullet. The bullet weight ranges from, say, 75 to 120 grain. If you're at a higher elevation, you might even get up to, say, 135. But generally speaking, 75 to 120. Most factory options probably around 80 to 110. Now, I don't talk about Weatherby cartridges a whole lot on this channel, mainly because I just don't have personal experience with them. But the one I have shot some is a 257 Weatherby. I really do like the cartridge. If you're looking for a extremely flat shooting Magnum with very light recoil, I definitely recommend the 257. And it probably, I would say, is my favorite Weatherby cartridge. It and the 300 Weatherby, I think, are just really nice Magnum cartridges. Speaking of favorites, it is said that the 257 is Roy Weatherby's favorite cartridge, or was his favorite cartridge. At the very least, it was one of his favorite. Now, many animals across the world have been taken with the 257 Weatherby, including, as the story goes, a Cape buffalo that Roy himself killed with the 257 Weatherby. However, I don't think that was ideal. I think he just did it to prove it could be done. But not the ideal cartridge to be doing something like that, and actually is illegal today. Now, with its bullet weights being between, 75 and 120, it definitely could be a dual purpose cartridge. It could be a medium game cartridge like antelope, sheep, deer, and it could be a varmint cartridge for something like a coyote. I would say it seems a bit excessive for varminting, as overbore as it is, which it is overbore, and it will have not the greatest barrel life. It might be a little bit excessive with that amount of powder going through that sized hole for something like a coyote. Really, it's ideal for that small to medium game, such as, like I said, antelope, mule deer, whitetail deer, and basically any kind of sheep that you could think of. Sheep, ram, goat, thing like that. Now the 25 caliber cartridge has kind of fell out of favor with the public today here in America. At one time it was quite popular. You had the 25-06, the 257 Roberts, and before that the 250 3000 Savage, the first cartridge to go over 3,000 feet per second, and then of course the 257 Weatherby. And of these cartridges, without question, the 257 Weatherby has the most velocity because it has the biggest case. If you were to compare the 25-06 and the 257 Weatherby, there's going to be probably at least 250 feet per second difference. So if you are a fan of the 25-06 and you like how it's flat, fast, and light recoiling, well, the next step up is that 257. You're just going to get all that plus a little bit more, plus 250 to 300 feet per second advantage. Now, if you compare the same type of a bullet, same grain weight, 110, in say a 270 Winchester or a 30-06, you're going to get very similar velocities. You probably, at its maximum potential, would get a little more out of the 257 because of the bigger case capacity. You're going to get over 80 grains of case capacity. And so it could potentially stoke it up a little bit faster. But generally speaking, all three of those cartridges, 257, 270, and 30-06, all could probably shoot that 110 grain bullet at least 3,400 feet per second, probably near 35, and maybe at the max potential of the 257, maybe even up to 3,600. But the difference is, with that same bullet weight, you're going to have a much higher BC in the 257. The 110 grain bullet in the 257 Weatherby just has a much higher BC than the 270 or the 30-06. And so when it comes to flat shooting, that aids in trajectory. Not only does it have that speed, that muzzle velocity, but it has a higher BC, therefore up to say 400 yards, it's going to retain energy and drop less. For all intents and purposes, the 257 Weatherby is a laser gun, shooting laser beams. Now, even though in that 110 grain bullet compared to the 270 or the 30-06, it has the higher BC, generally speaking, the 257 is not known for high BC bullets. With that 1 in 10 twist and kind of topping out around 120 grains, it's not going to be a cartridge that you get for high BC, heavy, long, sleek bullets. It's just not what it is. And so this is not the type of cartridge for a long range target shooting match competition type shooter. Could you hit a target at 1,000 yards? Absolutely. In fact, you wouldn't have to dial near as much because of how flat it is. But it's just not geared toward that. It doesn't have the bullet weights available, and that it's just not versatile when it comes to that type of a bullet. It's really just for hunting, and it's really, generally speaking, for close to ranges out to say 400 to 500 yards. But let's be clear, that's hunting distances. If you're shooting past 500 yards, you better have the right bullet and know all the information you need to know and have practiced and a lot of other things. A lot of things need to be just perfect to really go beyond 500 yards. And so from 0 to 400 yards really is hunting distances, let's say out west. So the 257 is really geared toward hunting, and hunting at 0 all the way up to 400 yards. In fact, the 257 is one of the flattest cartridges in the world and has a maximum point blank range getting close to 400 yards. have it 3.5 inches high at 100 yards, that thing is going to have a maximum point blank range of nearly 400 yards. Now with hand loading, of course, those bullets around the 100 grain class, you could get up 3,700, maybe even 3,800 feet per second. Those 80 grain bullets, I mean, it's possible 3,900 feet per second, maybe even 4,000. I would say that 100 to 120 grain bullet is really ideal for antelope-sized game, deer-sized game out of that 257 Weatherby. And two very popular bullets traditionally have been 110 grain AccuBond and the 115 grain Nosler ballistic tip. If you're hunting for some kind of sheep species, you know, some kind of ram, some kind of goats, it would be just about ideal. Shooting across canyons, trying to pick a goat off of a cliff somewhere with that laser beam, it would be a heck of a goat getter. But that's really the ideal scenarios in my mind, is really flat terrain, having an awesome maximum point blank range, knocking out antelopes, or maybe in mountainous areas, you know, shooting that laser, knocking down goats off of cliffs. It would be hard to beat the 257 in a scenario like that. I would not consider the 257 a mountain rifle. If you had it, say, in like a 22-inch barrel, I just don't think you're going to be happy with it. It really needs to be in that 26-inch barrel. Generally speaking, because of its high muzzle velocity, you're going to get similar energy to, say, a 30-06. Unless you get the really heavy 30-06 bullets, you're going to get very similar recoil to something like a 270. So for a Magnum laser beam cartridge, it's got very tolerable recoil and pretty darn good energy if you keep your distances within reason. It's my personal favorite Weatherby cartridge. It's Roy Weatherby's personal favorite Weatherby cartridge. And if you're looking to get into a classic Weatherby cartridge and a Mark V or a Vanguard, some kind of classic rifle, my personal recommendation, I think you'll have a ton of fun with the 257 Weatherby. Do you have any experience with the cartridge? I'd love to hear about it. What kind of game have you taken? What were the results? Any stories you have or any comments, whether good or bad, about the cartridge? I'd love for you to put them in the comments. I'd love to read them. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. More videos like this will be coming out. And I hope you have a wonderful day. And until next time, take care.